You should be live.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our third webinar of our series on abolitionist teaching. My name is Farima Porkhorshid, and I am a former elementary school teacher. I'm also a grassroots organizer with the Teachers for Social Justice and the People's Education Movement, as well as a very proud board member of the Education for Liberation Network. And I'm an assistant professor at the University of San Francisco. And so I'm honored to share space, virtual space with you all. We actually want to start off by taking a moment of silence and deep breaths for the countless Black lives lost to state-sanctioned violence. We collectively hold heavy hearts for the recent murders of Rayshard Brooks, Toyin Salau, Robert Fuller, George Floyd, Tony McDade, Breonna Taylor, Nina Pop, Ahmaud Arbery, and for all of the Black lives that have been murdered at the hands of white supremacy, including the thousands of lives lost to COVID-19, which has disproportionately impacted Black lives. So I'm going to ask that we take a few moments of silence and deep breaths in honor of their legacies. Thank you. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the stolen, occupied, unceded Ohlone lands that I am joining you from right here in the California Bay Area. And I invite you to also acknowledge the stolen land that you are on and share its indigenous name in the chat section if you're able to. If you don't know what land you are on, there's actually a phone app called Native Land that will help you to learn the names of indigenous lands that you are on anywhere you ever go, so that you can continue to show reverence to and acknowledge when you are on occupied land. The theft of indigenous land is actually part of centuries-long genocide and the ongoing project of settler colonialism. We recognize that these are ongoing struggles for Native nations, and that indigenous peoples should not be mistaken as ethnic groups, because they are in fact nations, and many are actively working to restore their sovereignty. And while I acknowledge and express gratitude for the Ohlone people who have been living on and working this land for centuries, I also recognize that our work must go beyond just words, and we must struggle with all First Nations who are working to protect their land and their people. And so as we discuss abolition in schools and beyond today, we must always commit to include indigenous voices and wisdom in our classrooms and in our schools. So in collaboration with this land acknowledgement, we ask that you also join us in committing to researching more about the people whose land you are currently standing on, or on which you teach on, or where your family lives on, that you also review recent reviews of books by Native authors, reviewed by Native reviewers, so as to inform whatever books that you use to teach about Indigenous peoples in your own classroom, and that you commit to being in solidarity with all Native people wherever you are. And lastly, let us not forget the US government's policies that continue to lock up immigrants, migrants, including asylum seekers who are often families with young children. These prisons often exacerbate the trauma that asylum seekers face and impede access to legal counsel. So let us continue to press the US government to end these harmful policies and permit individuals to pursue their claims in the community. Thank you.
What's good, y'all? Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Young People's A Healer's Tool. It's your boy Shaq. My CGP is he, him. I'm from Brooklyn, Brownsville. I'm definitely holding space for my hood and all its coaches. See how I'm dressing right now. I got the t-shirt. I recently turned 24, so your boy looking like Kobe. RP to that man. I'm representing HOLLA, How Our Lives Then Go Together, YLC, Youth Organizing Collective. Unfortunately, this is our last webinar. I'm glad that we're discussing youth leadership, because like, come on, like we've been here. And if you're not aware about the legacy and about youth movement and youth leadership, I'm about to put you on right now. These examples, and I'm gonna say their age too. Huey Newton, who was 24 when he co-founded the Black Panther movement. Fred Hampton, unfortunately, he got killed at 21. Quotes still echo today throughout the universe. Angela Davis being 25 and inspiring young people, Black women, me, Eddie Ellis being 24, joining the BPP movement in Harlem back in the day. Jonathan Jackson being 17, leading Black liberation, who inspired Pose Cha-Cha Jamez, oh man, my fault, brother, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, to create Young Lords in Chicago at 20 years old. My son, who else we got on the list? Even our elders, ancestors like Ella Baker and Grace Lee Boggs, who supported and advocated for leadership and liberation for young people in our movement. I'm basically saying that like young people been leading the movement for a minute, and we've been like the cause for like a lot of legacy that we stand on today. And this is why we're here today with this webinar, to acknowledge youth leadership. And to like, also, my fault, I'm nervous right now. Also acknowledge that there's an intergenerational gap that we have to like get closer with, because our elders and our young people are always like leading movement, but like in different ways. But yeah, I'm gonna pass it to Emily, my fellow co-host.
Thanks, Shaq. That was dope. Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Bautista. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a founding member of the People's Education Movement in Los Angeles. For the past 2 years, the Education for Liberation Network and Critical Resistance's working group on education and abolition has been organizing resources from across contexts to build Lessons in Liberation, an abolitionist toolkit for educators, which will be released in 2021 by AK Press. This toolkit documents how educators, young people, organizers, and communities are building and practicing abolition in their schools and neighborhoods, with examples and analysis of grassroots campaigns, first-person narratives about curricular projects, and descriptions about restorative, healing, indigenous, and transformative justice practices in classrooms. Our hope is that this toolkit will not only function to generate dialogue and practice, but that it will also elevate and network the politically urgent work that is in process in our schools and neighborhoods. As Shaq mentioned, we are in the third webinar of a 3-part series we've been hosting this June, which lends itself to the conversations that will be held in the toolkit. Before we start, we want to acknowledge the labor of everyone who has made these webinars possible. So thank you to our ASL interpreters, Sean Merriman Roberts and Rodney Levon, Corey and the Youth Organizing Collective from HOLLA, and Shiva, who helped organize this panel, as well as Farima Pourquershid, Chrissy A.Z. Hernandez, Erica Miners, and Stephanie Huptom, who helped moderate our previous webinars on abolitionist teaching and organizing. And also, special thank you to Ho'alehi Organista, who is helping with the technical aspects of broadcasting our webinar. We also want to thank all the organizers and contributors to Lessons in Liberation. And if all of our panelists can please turn on their videos and unmute themselves so our audience can see you all, we also want to thank our 5 amazing panelists with us today. So if everyone can go ahead and turn on their cameras.
Yay.
First, we got, hey. So first, we got Mickey Ferrara, co-founder of the Homegirl Box, facilitator and worker owner and graphic designer of Rebellious Root from Brooklyn, New York. Next, we got Alex, Raptivist, a human and healing justice organizer at Hala, How Our Lives Link All Together, and member of YOC, the Youth Organizing Collective, also in Hala from Brooklyn, New York. Next, we got Rukia Lumumba, Executive Director of the People's Advocacy Institute from Jackson, Mississippi. We got Daniel Mendoza, the Dream Beyond Bars and Technology Coordinator at Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, CURYJ, from East Oakland, California. And we got Amir Kasimir, a youth leader in Students Deserve from Los Angeles, California. Thanks, everybody. So if y'all can go ahead and take your cameras back off. So if you all want to read the full bios of our panelists and ways you can donate to the different organizations they are part of, definitely check them out in the YouTube description box. We encourage y'all to share your own resources in the comments section and to use tonight's hashtag Lessons in Liberation, which will also be in the YouTube description box. And quick note, some of our panelists may offer a few words in Spanish, and we apologize in advance if this is not picked up in our captioning or ASL interpretation. All right, and now I am so honored and excited to kick off our panel today. Before we dig into all the wisdom on youth organizing our panelists have to offer us today, we wanted to take a moment to honor their journeys and ask, what brings you here today? Amir, we would love to hear from you first.
Hello. So my name is Amir Kasimir, and what brings me here today is I work with Students Deserve, and so I've been doing nonprofit organizing since I got into high school, and through that I've been, trying to keep in touch with various organizations through LA, and I found myself landing with Students Deserves. And since I've been working with them, we've worked at random searches and pepper spray, and then go to defunding the police. And so committing to that community organizing and building that power is what brings me here today.
All right, thanks, Amir. All right, Mickey, we would love to hear from you next.
Hey y'all, so excited to be here today. Just joined by the brilliant young folks and other adult accomplices on this panel. Again, my name is Mickey. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York. Was born and raised here in New York City and have been organizing since I was 14 years old. And it really was my journey as a youth organizer that inspired me to continue to center, celebrate, and share power with young people as an accomplice. And so now in my work, I have the opportunity and the privilege to work alongside young people to build the schools and the communities that we dream of, and to radically imagine what our movements could look like if we center young people always.
Thank you, Mickey. Alex, I know we've been in a lot of meetings together, but please share with the rest of the world what brings you here today.
Appreciate that, Emily. Alex, they, them, also from New York, Brooklyn, Crown Heights, Bed-Stuy. What brings me here today, just a lot of like legacy that I stand on, and a history that I obtained through like being in spaces of other organizers and giving me leadership. And then also being a young person who also definitely felt like, you know, being seen as like a test subject or even just a participant in certain spaces, in other organizing spaces. So I just come here with a lot of love, energy, and respect for like people who really give leadership to youth.
Thanks, Alex. Rukia, we'd love to hear from you next.
Hey everybody, so I am on 2 devices. I want to apologize. I hope that you can see my face as I'm talking. But it's an honor to be here. I'm Rukia Lumumba. I'm in Jackson, Mississippi. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the People's Advocacy Institute. And what brings me here today is my long desire and commitment to literally deconstruct the current systems that we have and create new systems that are based in rehabilitation and restoration and healing and human justice, as Eddie Ellis and Divine Pryor and Kunji Ree and Chino Harding often say. I am committed to building a new reality here in Mississippi and throughout the world. I got into this work as a youth justice activist many years ago, organizing in high school, similar to some of the other panelists, organizing with the Malcolm X grassroots movement back in the 90s, fighting against police brutality and the attacks against our young people in Mississippi and in New York. And then really continued my journey through youth activism, having started, when I was 17, I started a summer camp for self-determination for young people, totally free, where we served 50 young people a year for 4 years, all throughout the rest of my high school and college, because I was going into my senior year. And then continue to do that work, organizing young folks, organizing us to be self-determined and to take ownership of our resources that we deserve. And so during Katrina, was able to lead 700 young people from across the nation in doing relief efforts in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama, and continue to do that work. Blessings of being able to then journey to New York and be able to really work, to really began to understand more the movement for abolitionist work, for prison abolitionist work, and learning from some great folks that you all mentioned in the opening. And so really grateful to return back to Mississippi, to really see this work happen in the place that I was reared in, the place that I have deep roots and love and want to see some significant change. So I'm just really grateful to be on this call with you all. I am an ally, right? I'm a youth ally because I'm older now, but I want to call out the names of some young folks that are here organizing in Mississippi who are really leading us for some real progressive change. And so calling out Nat Afia, Calandra Davis, calling out Arika Bennett, calling out Velvet, calling out Jessica Carter, so many young people that I can call out that are doing amazing work. And I just want to lift them because they are really guiding us here in Mississippi.
Thank you, Rukia. And last but not least, Danny, what brings you here today?
Hello, everybody. Daniel Mendoza with CURYJ. He, him, his. I like to say that this work found me because I was actually in a continuation high school about 7 years ago, and I was a part of the first positive male development class that CURYJ offered. And since then, I've grew attached to the organization and been a part of it and thriving as a staff member. But also, I'm formerly incarcerated. And upon my release of being incarcerated, CURYJ offered me employment. And I often thought like I wasn't going to be doing this for a long time. It was a stepping stone till I got on my feet. But within those first 2 years of being released, I saw a lot of my friends die and be incarcerated. And I often thought, like, if I had a conscious understanding of why this was happening in our community, and I was just sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything about it, then I was actually part of the problem. Um, so that's the reason why I do this work, is because I can't sit on the sideline and just watch these things happen to my communities and have an understanding of why it's happening and the systems that are oppressing our people, and not get involved. So yeah, that's why.
That's good. All right. Boom. Second question. If I'm melting, your boy is hot. But definitely want to ask Danny, Alex, and Amir, how are you engaging in non-traditional approaches to youth leadership and youth development? And I'm gonna start with Danny, but these, like, I know for like Hala, we recently dropped our documentary just like 2 days ago. It's centered around healing and how sharing your stories and being vulnerable is like the first step into like healing and healing yourself and your community. That's one way we use, and you can check that out on Hala TV, YouTube. But we use that to as a tool of just like expressing youth leadership, because a lot of those stories and journeying, we held like a lot of circles during our healing justice movement, around like 70 circles, and we have it all in a documentary. So definitely, again, I want to ask Danny, how are you engaging in non-traditional approach to youth leadership and youth development?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I'm the coordinator for a program over in Oakland called Dream Beyond Bars Fellowship. And it's a group of young formerly incarcerated leaders ages 17 to 25 who've all been impacted by the system in some way. And we do a lot of participatory action and research in our communities. And what's different in that than any other research that that traditionally our organizations have been involved in is that we're the ones doing the research and we're not the test subject. Kind of like how Alex was talking about earlier, we're oftentimes looked at as data and stats, and we have a lot of white people coming into our communities doing research on us and not really knowing what to look for. Where we have the advantage that we've been in the system and we know what rocks to uncover and where to look, what to look for. I think that's super empowering when we have our young people who've been incarcerated in juvenile facilities, who get to go back inside there and sit down with the chief of probation and share their knowledge and spill what they have to say. Because a lot of times when you're in those situations, you felt powerless and you felt like you had no power. So what we often try to aim to do is regain that power by showing our young people that you do have the skills and the talents to do the research and to be at those tables and speak your mind. And then other things that we do is pretty much everything and everything that a young person has an interest in. We want to leave the opportunity for that young person to explore that at our organization. For instance, we're working on our garden right now. We have a lot of young people, after using some of the power tools and things like that, they're interested in, like, well, I want to do landscaping, or I want to go home and do my own garden. We oftentimes have like flag football or different outdoor activities that our young people get to like smile and let loose and get out of the neighborhood, and we take them to the Oakland Hills. So I say anything and everything, and we don't impose this on our young people. We got to meet our young people where they're at. It takes, we say relationships before tasks. I have to build a relationship with any young person and get to understand what they're going through before I can try to really engage in their leadership development. So those are some of the things that we do.
Well, now I'm gonna ask Alex the same question.
Yes, dope. How y'all doing? So definitely at Holla How Our Lives Link All Together, we engage in a lot of non-traditional grassroots youth leadership development, which is really like talking about our ancestors, the movements they stand on, while we're like in an intergenerational space together. And that is like also like thinking about like Ella Baker, and like her theories of like group-centered movements, group-centered leadership. And like really us coming together and doing that work and learning about like our histories and herstories and knowledge, gives us.
Hello. So the ways that I'm engaging in non-traditional approaches to youth leadership. So I think for me, at least as a student, it comes with the adults being transparent. So the first step is transparency and being able to produce spaces for young people. I heard, I think it was Daniel saying that they create space for young people to find the things that they're interested in. And then very similarly, I've been able to find organizations that do the same thing, like Students Deserve, when it's an organization about, of course, organizing, how youth organize and lead the space. And so there's a guiding framework to allow youth to be able to formulate our own things. That, for example, we started the youth did a survey in order to get traction for our anti-school police campaign, and the youth developed the survey along with the assistance of some of our adult allies, and just not only developed it but also distributed the surveys. as well as engaging youth leading the marches for the most part, being able to go out and speak in the forefront and, navigate the marches, and also teaching the methods of engagement, right? So in the same way that a lot of the teachers are able to educate young folks, they're able to put us on game of how do we interact with these systems, as opposed to just trying to spoon feed us different courses or methods of action. They actually teach us the systematic implications and how do we combat that ourselves.
Thank you so much, Amir. So we've gotten feedback from y'all that the audio was off while Alex was speaking. So Alex, if you don't mind circling back and going ahead and saying what you said earlier, just because it seems like the audio didn't go through for our audience.
Nah, definitely. Thank you. How y'all doing? Back again. So like I was saying before, at Hala, how our lives link all together, we deeply are rooted in grassroots, non-traditional youth organizing, which is deeply rooted in like learning about our ancestors, the movements that we stand on, while we're like building in an intergenerational space with each other. And through this process, we like are able to like journey with each other, build with each other, share stories and grow. And I say like one of our ways that like we do our non-traditional youth leadership work is an 18-month process. And I say like why I also think is like non-traditional, but also abolition, because other spaces don't usually have young people for like 18 months, usually 4 months or 6 months. But also like the reason why we think about building with each other for this long, because we know it takes a long time journey with each other, to share stories, to share our struggle, and to also be with each other, to stand with each other through the struggle. Also uplifting that through the process of like youth leadership in Hala, we have our youth arm, which is YLC, the Youth Organizing Collective, which is co-leading, co-organizing, and continuing the healing justice movement, which is also connected to other movements that our ancestors have stood on and have led. And with that, we was deeply rooted in like wanting to heal with people, build with other folks in circle. So we created circles, we created the agenda for circles. And through that process, we really wanted people to like be able to get vulnerable, share stories. And we do that because we know like there's many stories or things about each other that the system wants you to throw away or doesn't care about. And then also throughout the like process of like doing our healing justice movement, we wanted to like get people's truths. So we, had a survey and we wanted to collect people's truths. And through like understanding PAR, we knew that like we had to give back to our communities. We need to give back the truth to the communities. And the way that we gave back truth to our communities was, one, creating a documentary, and two, was creating a healing justice album. And that was a way that we wanted to report back to our communities for showing their love and their healing and their struggle, but also in a way of knowing that like we're here to struggle with them as well.
Thanks, Alex, for doing another go around with that. Appreciate everyone being real patient with all of our tech situations that we're going through right now. But I really want to thank everyone who shared all their experiences with non-traditional approaches. And what y'all are saying really makes me think about when I came into this work and I was learning about how the young people of the Black Panther Party, they would not only declare with conviction their needs and vision, but also how they had the courage, perseverance, and commitment to unapologetically build and protect community spaces aligned with their imaginations and intentions with integrity. And that has kept me grounded and inspired in the work I still do today. And in recent times, we even see how young people have risen to the call to protect their elders while they battle having the highest COVID-19 infection rates per capita in the Navajo Nation. In reflecting upon this, Indigenous scholar Megan Bing has powerfully said that in times like these, it is young people who create more sophisticated ways of taking care of the collective and keeping our communities safe, even more than adults. So, in this regard, young people are healers too. So, how can youth lead abolitionist organizing to change and heal our communities? Rukia, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this question first.
Thank you so much. It's such a great question. And, one thing I'll say is that, youth have always been leading and have always been healers. I mean, if we look at history, and I think that, Emily, you started your comments by saying that, but also Alex came in and started by really listing out all of the ways that youth have literally changed the world. If we look throughout history across the world, especially in this country, we see that every movement that we've ever had that has been successful has been because of youth leadership. And so, I think it's not so much how do youth lead, it's what additional resources are we providing to ensure that they can be successful, and that it's not in addition to what's happening, but that we're working with, that we're following youth lead. I think the most important piece is that we follow the energy that youth have in terms of moving us forward. The energy, but also the commitment and the foresight, right? The vision of what they really want to see, and that passion of what a new future looks like for us. I mean, I remember when I was younger, like my strength, my energy, my drive was so hardcore. You know what I'm saying? I would just get out there and just go. And I didn't have as much to consider in terms of a child to think of that I got to go home to now, right? I didn't have as many additional responsibilities that I have right now in terms of ensuring that, rent is paid or mortgage is paid and all of this. And so I had a lot less to lose and a whole lot more to gain. And I think as young people, we have to really lift up the fact that they are really the ones that can guide us. And I think that during the civil rights movement, they really recognized that. If you look back at the civil rights movement, or even the movement in South Africa, right? The student movement in South Africa, students were put at the front lines, right? They were put on the front lines because they had not only the energy and the rigor, but they also were in the best position to move and lead us. One, they had the I don't want to call it anger. I want to call it, it was a little anger, right? We were all angry, but their anger turns into action, right? And so they were put on the front lines, and oftentimes that motivated elders to jump in and get involved. When oftentimes elders were scared of losing their jobs, right? Didn't want to go to the protest lines because they didn't want to lose their jobs. And a number of other things, were scared about, what would happen to their families, and so there's a lot of fear that we develop as we get older. And as younger folks, we're more fearless. At least I know that was my experience. And I felt very supported by other young people during my time of action. And I felt supported by some elders. I think we can improve in how we support our young people. I think that we can literally begin to listen deeply. I think that that's really critical. Listening to what young people are saying are the core needs and issues. I think we need to also really engage in a process of beginning to resource young people to not only lead us on the front lines of protests and things like that, but also to lead us as the healers that they are, right? In terms of becoming peer mentors, making sure that they have the resources and that we're engaging in the education component that we need to be engaging in to tell our stories as elders, to tell our stories as what we were doing when we were younger, because that helps to inform as well. I think we need to share those histories. I think there's an intergenerational piece that comes into this, where the wisdom of the elders matched with the wisdom and action and stamina of the young people creates a beautiful explosion of change. And so I just I put that out there as one way that I think that we can really support our young people in pushing an abolitionist agenda. And I think that there are other ways that we do that too. One is through people's assemblies. So right now, a number of young people under the age, I think young people all ages are important. And so young people, even under the age of 18, who can't necessarily vote in elections, have a right to be a part of the policy changes that need to happen. They have a right to have a voice and make the decisions. And so through community-led efforts such as people's assemblies, right, we have an opportunity to engage all young people in the process of creating laws and policies that actually change their communities. And so like using, tools such as people's assemblies, using peer mentoring tools such as credible messenger programs and things like that, I think are super helpful. In modern day, and then I'll be quiet. I think when we look right now at what's going on, it is youth that are making our movement to defund the police. Is moving our movement around police violence, ending police violence. I think it is our young people. And so I really believe that it'll be our young people that bring us to an abolitionist world in the future.
Thank you. That was everything. Thank you, Rukia. So next, Amir, repping for the young folks in this work. We would love to hear from you next.
Hello. So youth are healers because I feel like, well, I'll just start by saying like youth are internally motivated in the same way that adults are, and by everybody is, and so I feel like I have my motivations to be active and work to be a healer and work to promote social change because of what I see in my environment, and the same motivations that any adult would feel to be as active or as inactive, so youth are youth as with Students Deserve. At least we came together with 9 events post COVID, like as soon as the schools broke up, and we got together and were able to organize a list of demands for things that we didn't want in schools when we went back. So like that's just an example of, as a collective, youth being able to be organized and come together and create something independent of adult guidance, or with adult guidance but independent of what we were told, and so that's helpful for us because it's just a sign that we're able to do these things and be able to decide on what our movements are. And then once the George Floyd situation and all the police killings started to come to light, we came together once more and started to organize protests and be out in the forefront once more, because although we got some of our demands passed for post-COVID efforts, we felt like there was time to be more, and so we started working on a police ban in schools. That's just ways that young people are able to lead the space and heal inside of ourselves, internally, and just grapple with those things. And I think that stems from like what Rukia was saying, our ability to have less inhibitions. We're not as afraid of losing our jobs, of the people that are quote our adults, or judging us. They're already judging us as young people. We're already seen as having our own little world. Our music is different, our actions are different, and so we're less afraid of the judgment that comes with radical thought. The idea of abolishing police isn't as heavily in our minds as solid as some ideas that older people might have. And so that fluidity that we have in our identities and in our worldview allows us to come up with different concepts and be creative in how we decide to heal spaces and how we enter spaces. I feel like once again what Rukia was saying, that adults also have a lot of fear and a lot of trauma in them that they might not be able to really address, or they might hold in them, and so that might prevents you from being able to thoroughly heal a space. As just think about having if you're in a bad mood and somebody brings a baby in, it makes you feel like you're in a better mood. You see the baby and it's smiling, it's laughing, and similarly young folks are able to come with a fresh attitude and navigate the space and heal differently than how an older person would. And that's just how young people are able to see things through different lenses. And that's really where I feel like our power comes from.
Whew, I got chills from that, Amir. Thank you so much for repping the youth perspective here. Yes, thank you. Mickey, we would love to hear some of your insights and reflections next.
Amazing. So I just want to kick off by saying that this call is evidence that young people are healers. I didn't share this in my introduction, but even just like sitting with the brilliance that has just been shared in this panel, I've been reflecting on my own journey as an organizer and as a young person, and being trained by Rukia when I was a youth organizer at Sadie Nash in New York City, and then later being able to come into the position of being a facilitator and a circle keeper and a holder of space alongside young people, and then had the experience of witnessing and seeing Alex and Shaq in action, right, activating their leadership in all of these different ways. And so right now, I'm even having a moment where I'm also re-remembering and acknowledging, right, all of the ways that young people have healed me and all of the ways that folks who believe in the fierce power of young people's leadership are also in a process of healing together. And that energy, I think, is contagious, and it is exactly what we need to live out a blueprint and a vision for what abolition can actually look and feel like in our lifetime, right? And Alex and Shaq earlier mentioned Ella Baker, and I purposely like brought this piece of Ella to like hold me and to guide me behind me, and this is by Makiba or Just Keebs. And I think when we think about and talk about Ella Baker, we know that there's so many lessons that she taught us and that she continues to anchor us in this work. And one that I think about often is, how do we build leaderful movements? How do we actually resist the idea that there has to be just one person leading our movements? And how can that be a radical way that we start to shift power and shift leadership within our organizations and spaces? That there is actually enough room for all of us, adult accomplices and young people, and enough room for adults to make more space for young people, to acknowledge the things that we've learned from young people that maybe we've never thanked them for, right? And to be in a deep commitment to listen and to honor the voices and brilliance of young people. And I think that that can happen in so many ways, and so many brilliant offerings have already been made. But some others that I've been thinking about is, what does it mean for us to also give spaces for young people to imagine abolition beyond reforms, right? And to really sit in a process of radically imagining, well, what do you actually want your school to look like? If you got to create the blueprint for your school, yes, it would exist without police. And what else? Like, what else do you dream of? What else is possible beyond this? And really allowing that tool, that imagining exercise, right, to guide the work that we get to do together. I think right now, a lot of youth activism, rightfully so, is in direct response to racist and sexist policies that over-police, push our young people out of schools and out of our communities, and are also in response to the ways that policing and ICE enforcement terrorize our communities as a whole, right? And so for me, right, like the invitation is also like, what else are we inviting our young people into if we're not inviting them to radically imagine what they would create, right? And what they would offer, and what they would want to be able to live in besides what we're responding to in this moment. And so I'm inspired by all of like the folks on this call and all of the youth organizing that's happening, and really thinking about what is the vision that we want to collectively imagine, and how can we make sure that young people are not left out of that? Another example that I'm reminded of when we talk about our elders in the movement, like Grace Lee Boggs, who saw 102 years old, it was young people who were going to her house on a daily basis and reading to her. It was young people who were like staying overnight and making sure that she ate and was checked in on. And so I know that we have radical models of what this can look like. And I'm thankful to be able to be in ever transforming relationships with young people that I've been in community with, where maybe the power dynamic was that I was the facilitator or the youth worker, and they were the youth in the program. And now we're like leading programs together, right? And we're actually shifting the ways that power is held in our organizations, and letting folks like funders know, no, we're not going to lead this work in the ways that you envision this to be led, but we're really going to allow the radical imagination that our young people are conceiving of and dreaming of and giving birth to guide us. And so I am, sitting here, like also really reflecting on my own journey. And even before I knew the words abolition, right, really being able to recognize that young people know, and young people should be trusted. And we also get to think about what structures need to shift and evolve and transform to make sure that they can have the spaces that they deserve.
Boom. Thank you, Mickey, because that was beautiful. Because that's the right segue to the last question. Asking about what advice would you give to adults who want to center young people as leaders in movement, and what other advice would you give to young people? And this is the lightning round. This is the last question, so everybody's gonna be answering this. I'm gonna start off with Danny and repeat again. What advice would you give to adults who want to center young people as leaders in their movement? And what other advice would you give to young people? So start off with Danny. 2 minutes each.
Yeah, I think the advice I give to adults who want to center young people in the movement is to make space for young people. Someone once told me that the goal of our work is to work ourselves out of a job. Hopefully, 5 years down the line, incarceration rates decrease so much, there's no such thing as incarceration, that they won't require an abundance of nonprofits doing this work in our community. So I say make space for young people to carry out some of your work. And the second part I'd say is training and TA assistance, and giving young people the skills to accomplish what they want to accomplish, and not just kind of giving them the same old stuff that you were given, and kind of making space for a young person to kind of share out what they need and what they want. Also, we're at a very pivotal point, I think, in American history and social justice work, where the idea of closing down facilities is not radical no more. It's definitely, it could happen. So I think for young people, advice is to sky's the limit and keep on pushing, because this is what our generation, the generations before us and our ancestors fought for us to take on the torch and to keep on pushing. But now it seems like things could actually happen. So that's kind of the advice I give to the young people and to the adults who are there to support.
Word. Good looks. Next person, Rukia.
Yeah, I echo what has already been said. And also I just add that, I think that we need to have patience and the ability to relinquish our idea of power as elders and as young people. So there needs to be some sharing of those. So I think, for example, I think elders, we need to have more patience, and I'm not quite an elder yet. I'm kind of like in between. I'm sorry, I forgot my camera wasn't on. I apologize for that. As non-young people, I think that we, need to have patience with the process, right? And an understanding that we have to relinquish power, right? That we can't just hold all of the power, all of the decision-making power, that we actually have to make space, as Danny said, to ensure that young people are leading with us and not in addition to. Like, it needs to be an integrated process, not one or the other. And so, and as young people, I think that young people also have to have patience with elders. Oftentimes when I am, in conversation with younger people that are joining an organization that may have been in existence for a very long time and has a lot of older members, I remind them, that, these folks have been here for a long time. It's going to take them some time to adjust to someone else coming in with brilliant, bright, new ideas, challenging the way that they've been doing things for like decades. And at the same time, I have conversation with the elders, like, you don't want to push young people out, because it is their ideas that's moving you forward. That's bringing the energy, and that's bringing a new perspective on what the work should be. Because what you did was for a time and a place when you were moving and shaking and things were different. Things are moving in a new direction, and you need new minds and the brilliance of those minds to move us towards a new future, right? So having a little patience with each other and understanding the concept of sharing power, right? That we all make decisions collectively and not, like just as individuals. I also think that we want to engage in a process of being critical with love, right? Like exercising a real understanding that we can definitely challenge ideas, right? But we need to challenge those ideas with a sense of love. And I'm defining love as one of the great educators that I know, Ajishafe Awoni, says, love is clarity, right? So like literally offering critique with clarity, to offer clarity about an issue or an idea that you may have, right? And then also with kindness, right? Not to attack an individual or make their idea feel less, but actually to be able to lift each other up and come to a place where you can both agree that the way moving forward is this way or that, right? And so I think, like really being critical with love, I think that's really important. And then, the last thing, because I know that this is our last opportunity to really, really talk, is I wanted to really lift up, I think, a need for us all to have more attention on what's happening in our justice system, or our lack of justice system, our criminal system, around young people. Throughout the nation, young people have very little rights when it comes to the criminal system. Normally, their bails are higher than even that of adults. So young people are sitting inside of jails. And in Mississippi, jails are normally adult jails where young people are sitting, because many of the towns are rural. So there's not a juvenile detention facility where young people can go and sit with other young people. Instead, young people are sitting in isolation in adult facilities, right? On bonds as high as $50,000 to some craziness as $250,000, right? Bonds. They have the highest bonds of most people, higher than adults, and so that is a lack of rights and recognition of the right of a young people to a fair trial process, to be free until they await trial. And so I really want us to begin to push harder and pay more attention to how our young people are treated in the criminal system, because I think it is an important issue. And I think that it is one way that we can truly move towards pushing an abolitionist agenda and ending the poor treatment of our young people in the criminal system. So,
Thank you, because I definitely agree. Young people and our elders need to see each other. Definitely affirming that. Alex, you're next.
Dope. And just thank you, Rukia, Danny, everybody for their words, man. Mickey, my femtor, got so much love for you. So definitely, I'm, just letting people know, like, let young people lead. I think some folks are concerned about, like, oh, young people might not know something, and I think, I like, this is a commitment to our elders, being committed in the journey with your young people, by like learning and teaching together. And I think, um, like a part of that, a lot of our older folks don't like hearing things from our young people, having hard conversations with our young people. A lot of our older folks also maybe not journeying fully with their young folks, whoever they be building with. Like, are y'all just hitting each other up when, like, oh, it's program time or whatever? Like, are you really journeying with your young people to be with them in this process of, like, of building with them? And I think also in that process is like passing torches. Who you passing torches to? If you swear like you are older organizer and whatever, like, you should be having like at least 4 young people that like whoever that you passing torches to. And I think that's like very like um intentional with the like journey and building with folks. Because even after you pass your torch, you should still be journeying with that young person. You should still be journeying with your people. Um, and then I think another part is, are you letting young people be at the table to like talk about like the organizational structure and culture? Because I think certain spaces and places definitely need to change. And if you hear from your young people and actually like take in what they're saying, then and then figure that out through like circling, building with each other, creating ideas of ways that the organization could change for the young people, because they're gonna be the ones who's probably gonna take that space to the next level, or take our work and our history to the next level. So definitely just thinking about how we journeying with our young people. And advice that I would give to young people, don't wait for no green light. I think, I love my elders and I love like my ancestors and everyone. But definitely don't wait for a green light to make change happen. And I think people is gonna always ride out with you and always gonna care for you when they see that too.
Thank you, Alex. Next up is Mickey.
So I just want to, build on what was just shared by Alex. This idea that we can journey together, I think is something that's really, really important. There has been no like radical and revolutionary work that has existed without vulnerability, right? And so when we think about the types of relationships that we should be and can be building as accomplices with our young people, right? I think it demands of us a different level of vulnerability and a willingness to share, right? To show up, not as like perfect, right? Or not as without flaws, but to really show up and to be in that journey and in that conversation with them. And to also allow yourself to be seen in your messiness, in your mistakes, in the things that have not gone well or are not currently going well, right? Like some of the most healing conversations for me, specifically with Alex, have reminded me that like Alex is actually my teacher. And Alex is my comrade, and Alex is my guide, and Alex has healed me and has been with me on this healing journey. And every conversation that we have, when I'm willing to meet him in vulnerability and he's willing to meet me, allows both of us to show up and be different in the world. And it also shifts the way that we show up in community and in space together, right? And so my call to action, to educators, to folks that want to continue to be abolitionists in this work, to be deeply committed and connected to young people, is to be willing to meet them in the deep, deep ways that they're showing up. And to not be scared that just because maybe some of our mentors and femtors before us didn't show up like that for us, or didn't, or weren't willing to be authentic and vulnerable, and to not be perfect, this is our opportunity to also shift and change what it means to be creating family with each other. Families that are going to, again, be in these movements, hopefully for the rest of our lifetimes. And we will always remember, right, the ways that folks treat us, right, to bring that into the space and to acknowledge that when we are met with trust, when we are met with that authenticity, then we are able to get that from our young people as well. But if we exist in a place of performance, or we exist in a place where maybe we're saying one thing but doing something else, that's actually not going to be conducive to the radical reimagining and the radical relationships that we want to have. Give yourself the space to be healed by young people, to be nurtured home by young people, to also recognize when it's not about you, and it should be about them, and also to continue to be in that journey, like Alex so beautifully talked about. It's a commitment that we make, not just for a session or a workshop, but that we're making for our lifetime, and that we're making as activists in this work. And so after this panel, right, like, who are the young people that you're texting, right? Like, who are the folks that you're following up with and showing love to? And maybe, right, the invitation is to say, I never thanked you for this, but now is my opportunity to actually step up and to let you know how much you mean to me in my life, how much I love you, right? And to recognize that those relationships are what we need to build this new world, and to continue to invest in them, because our lives and our young people's lives depend on it.
So much, Mickey. Now we have the mayor. Last person.
Yeah, so hey. So I think that my advice that I would give to adults who want to center young people is to guide. I like what Alex said about going on a journey together, and that's so real. It's not about even leading somebody. A guide still goes on the journey with you. So just being able to not only teach and provide with a basis of what we can understand and give like a framework that students can step into, but treating them as a human, as a person, as another person that's sitting next to you, and to help allow them to navigate as well. Providing a young person with the opportunity to speak and say, or even ask a question that they might not have asked otherwise, prompting that critical thought or that action. Because as a young person, we do lack a lot of inhibitions, but I think that a key thing that holds us back is waiting for an okay or prompting a response. And I like that you said don't wait for an okay, and that's definitely true. You're not waiting for that okay, but there are the sparking of that idea is what gives young people that imagination, that ability to be like, let me take the next step and follow through. And so I think that I advise elders and adults in this space just to be willing to let a young person guide you out of your comfort zone. Having those tough conversations, that you're not going to have a tough conversation with yourself. And so being willing to say something to prompt a response that will make you uncomfortable. Giving a young person the ability to answer a question that they might not have thought of, but they will answer it in a unique way that you may not have engaged with or might want to reconcile with. There's things about the world that young people aren't aware of, and therefore we just don't know what we can provide, how we can help. And those things are deep founded in the psyches of older folks. And so I would just say that I advise young people to be, or older people to be open-minded with how we communicate with adults, just making sure that we do have very open and genuine conversations, and have that vulnerability piece that's so important in a movement. Just making sure that we communicate and stay in constant back and forth, just making sure that we're being transparent.
Word, thank you. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank everybody that just spoke. Y'all gave a lot with y'all answers and the questions. I want to thank again all our panelists. If you didn't know their names, Mickey Ferreira, Alex Davis, Rukia Lumumba. And my fault if I pronounce the names wrong. Danielle Mendoza and Amir Kashmir. Thank you again for holding space with us as young people, being part of the legacy, because we are the legacy. I also want to thank the people that build the webinar. I want to thank the people that, the audience watching. I know you see me right now. My mom's watching, people on the block. I want to thank the hood. Shout outs to the hood, all the moms, all the fathers, all the little brothers and sisters that just going through it. Black and brown folks, indigenous folks. Special thanks to Chrissy Hernandez, Shiva, Corey, Wow C, Holla in the building, and myself, and Emily, also my fellow host. I want to also give a huge thanks to our interpreters, ASL. Definitely y'all holding it down with the energy, holding space with us. And that's it. I'm gonna pass it to Emily to say some more words.
Thank you for kicking off all those thank yous. Wow, y'all. I don't know about y'all, but I am so glad this is going to be saved because there was just so many gems dropped, so much wisdom. I really thank all the panelists for sharing so many intimate experiences, but so much wisdom to guide the work to move forward. So if y'all want to rewind or rewatch or share or forward today's panel, it will be available on the Education for Liberation Network YouTube channel and Facebook page. And for those of y'all who are registered, stay on the lookout for a follow-up email with opportunities for engagement and resources. And for everyone here, remember to check out the upcoming Lessons in Liberation Toolkit that will be published and available in 2021. And I am so thankful to now turn the mic to Farima. Thank you so much for opening the space and really just being present with everyone on the panel and everything they had to say today. And so I want to go ahead and turn the mic over to Farima to close us out, to help us reflect on everything that we heard today and to help push us and challenge us as we continue the work. So, Farima.
Hey, y'all. Super grateful for all of the brilliance that was shared today. I just want to connect a few things that was shared today from folks. I really appreciated how Rukia really drove it home around the youth have always been leading. They have always been healers. And there's this power that happens when there's that intergenerational connection between the wisdom of the elders matched with the wisdom of the young people, plus their stamina, right? And so you express that so beautifully, Rukia, just highlighting how that is a catalyst for abolitionist change, right? But beyond that, you talked about the need for young people to be involved in decision-making, especially around policies and decisions that impact their lives the most. And so when we think about our roles as educators, how are we also centering young people in the ways that we're thinking about school policies and practices and giving them space to really push back and to reimagine new ways of being. You talked about love as clarity, right? And really pushing ourselves harder to pay more attention to young people and to really think about how they're treated in these carceral systems. And when we say carceral systems, talking about incarceration, how young folks are incarcerated, but also the carceral logics that they navigate in schools today, right? Danny, you talked about the importance of making space for young people and how the goal eventually for us is to not have our job, is to pass our job down, right? And to really invest in the training of young people, to really invest in giving them opportunities to support and to learn skill development so that they can take their ideas and really push forward. Alex, you talked about the importance of vulnerability, right? Beyond just passing the torch, but how are we journeying with young people, right? And being open to change. And really what I appreciated you talking about is us being okay and comfortable with being uncomfortable. Sometimes young folks are going to hold mirrors to us that we ain't ready to see just yet. And so I appreciate you really pushing us to think about honoring the wisdom and the passion and the lens that young people bring that sometimes is uncomfortable, right? And you talked about the importance of femtors, mentors. Let's talk about themtors, right? And really following the lead of folks who are on the margins and building really close relationships with them, right? Mickey, you really touched on allowing ourselves to show up in our messiness, in our vulnerability, in our mistakes, and really meeting young people where they're at and allowing young people to meet us where we're at. And really what you're saying is to meet each other at our humanity. Like that's at the center of abolitionist practice, right? And so thank you for also helping us to understand that there shouldn't just be a few leaders that are highlighted in this movement, right? That there is enough room and enough space for all of us to lead and to create change. And so how do we create space for young people to radically imagine a world not only without police, but imagine a world that really encapsulates their visions of joy, of justice, of liberation, right? And Amir, thank you so much for saying how important it is for us to offer frameworks, but you know, beyond offering frameworks, how do we allow young people to take up these frameworks in ways that they can build from and really have opportunities to lead and to not wait for an okay, right? That youth actually benefit from having these ideas sparked and allowing themselves to build from these movements. And so I just offered some important highlights on what young people need and are asking of us as adult co-conspirators. I'm asking that you all, you know, in the spirit of how we end our webinars, what is one intention that you want to set as an adult co-conspirator? If you're not an adult that's watching this webinar, maybe you're a young person, whoever you are, what is the intention that you want to set and the action step that you want to take to really honor and support youth leadership and youth activism? What does that look like from where you are? What does that look like from your classroom or from your organization, from your home even, right? From your neighborhood and community, from your church, from wherever it is that you engage with young people? What can you do to really center their voices and honor their leadership? What does that look like in tangible ways? And I want to really lift up the words of our femtor, Dr. Angela Davis, when she says, we must never stop as older people. We still got hella work to do, right? But she says, but we have to learn how to take leadership from the youth. Because at the end of the day, they're not just our future, they're our right now, right? I'm saying that in the words of one of my best friends, Lauren Adams, where she says, you know, we have to really think about not just thinking of young people in a distance, but like they're our right now. We wouldn't be where we are right now in this movement without the voices and leadership of young folks. And so in that chat, as you write your intention, as you write down your action step, I want you to really commit to that and maybe even speak that into existence to someone else that you know, that you love, that you organize with, that you respect, and really start to plan out what that can look like on a daily basis wherever you are. Thanks, y'all, for being with us. Thank you for committing to want to create change. Thank you for honoring the young folks today, young folks who spoke today and also who are listening. Deep gratitude and respect for all that you are and all that you do and all the directions that you're taking us and moving us from. Much love, y'all.